The most important thing is your well-being and your health and your recovery, and on behalf of all of us here.
Long before Simon Cowell became a household name with his signature glare and brutal honesty, his journey began in the shadow of rejection and rebellion. Born into a privileged but emotionally fragmented British family in 1959, Simon's early years were anything but stable. Despite his father's influential role at EMI Music Publishing, Simon was far from the polished media mogul we know today. He was expelled from nearly every school he attended, repeatedly clashing with teachers and authority figures who deemed him lazy, arrogant, or simply unteachable. But behind the smirks and the detentions was a teenager already determined to defy conventional success. After a string of failed academic attempts, he was pushed into the workforce and landed in the mailroom at EMI Records thanks to his father's connections. But instead of playing it safe, Simon began climbing from the inside, learning how the industry really worked, not by charm or talent, but through sheer audacity. Colleagues at the time described him as cold, calculated, and cunning, someone who knew how to spot an opportunity and wasn't afraid to exploit it. He got fired more than once, often for speaking out of turn or undermining superiors. But each dismissal only seemed to harden his resolve. In an era where most tried to play nice for their shot at fame, Simon built his reputation on defiance. Long before Idol, before the fame and the fortune, Simon Cowell was sharpening his instincts in the back rooms of record labels, quietly observing the music industry's weakest links, and waiting for the right moment to strike. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing power. And as we'll soon see, that hunger would take him higher than anyone imagined, but not without consequences. In the 1980s, Simon Cowell finally found his opening, producing novelty records that, while critically panned, sold in shocking numbers. From children's cartoon songs to cheesy disco singles, he cashed in on the kind of music industry veterans dismissed as garbage. But Cowell saw what others missed: profit. By the late 80s, he was reportedly a millionaire. But that success came with a dangerous overconfidence. Lavish spending, failed side ventures, and poor investments soon turned his bank balance upside down. Within a few years, the empire Simon built on bubblegum pop had burst. By the early 1990s, the mogul in the making was broke, humiliated, and living back in his parents' modest home. It was a dramatic fall from grace, one he kept mostly out of the public eye. For a man obsessed with control, the collapse was more than financial, it was personal. Sources close to Cowell at the time say he became reclusive, bitter, and quietly obsessed with figuring out how to rebuild, not just his fortune, but his reputation. He refused to let the industry push him out. Instead, he doubled down, studying the shifting tides of television and music branding. While the world saw a washed-up music executive licking his wounds, Simon was already plotting his next move. What came next was the birth of a new kind of entertainment, a brutal, cutthroat fusion of music, media, and reality TV that would rewrite the rules of global fame. But few knew how close he'd come to vanishing forever. Without that bankruptcy, without that brutal reset, there might have been no Simon Cowell as we know him today. He didn't just rise again, he weaponized his failure. By the early 2000s, Simon Cowell was done playing the sidelines. Armed with hard-earned lessons and a sharpened instinct for spectacle, he co-created Pop Idol in the UK and soon after American Idol in the US, a television format that didn't just showcase talent, but glorified criticism, failure, and emotional breakdowns. While others celebrated the singers, Simon became the breakout star for being unapologetically cruel. But here's what viewers didn't see. The sarcasm, the scowls, the signature V-necks, every element of Simon's image was deliberately crafted for maximum reaction. Behind the scenes, Cowell negotiated ironclad contracts, ensuring he didn't just appear on screen. He owned a piece of everything: merchandise, music rights, reruns. Every tear that dropped on stage was quietly monetized. Contestants were signed under his Psycho label, many with exploitative clauses that critics later called legal traps. But for Simon, it was just business. Idol wasn't a singing competition, it was a machine, and he was the one pulling every lever. With every season, his bank account ballooned, his power expanded, and his public persona transformed from villain to visionary. Still, insiders whispered about the dark machinery beneath the stage lights. Stories of artists shelved, manipulated, or cast aside when they no longer fit the brand. But Cowell, unfazed, kept building. From The X Factor to Britain's Got Talent, his empire didn't just dominate TV. It rewired pop culture itself. What no one realized was that Simon wasn't just producing shows. He was engineering fame and reprogramming the rules of celebrity in real time. As Simon Cowell's empire grew, so did his list of enemies. And not just the usual critics. These were industry giants, former partners, and even co-creators who felt blindsided by his ambition. The most infamous feud? His clash with Simon Fuller, the original mastermind behind the Idol format. What began as a creative partnership quickly devolved into a bitter legal war as Fuller accused Cowell of hijacking the Pop Idol blueprint and rebranding it into The X Factor, a show that mirrored the Idol format almost beat for beat. Lawsuits flew, headlines exploded, and millions were at stake. But Cowell didn't flinch. He fought back with counterclaims, legal maneuvering, and his usual cold precision, eventually reaching a settlement that allowed him to keep growing unchecked. Behind the courtroom drama, there were whispers of even murkier tactics. Former contestants and insiders alleged that Cowell's contracts came with gag clauses, financial penalties, and creative restrictions that left some artists silenced and shelved. Reports surfaced of artists being dropped with no explanation, tours canceled without warning, and rumors that Simon handpicked winners based on marketability, not talent. Even fellow judges reportedly clashed with him off camera, accusing him of manipulating edits and outcomes to fit his agenda. Yet despite the backlash, Cowell thrived. Lawsuits came and went, critics screamed into the void, but Simon stayed on top, untouchable, unbothered, and always 3 steps ahead. To the public, he was still the sharp-tongued genius on TV. But behind closed doors, many saw a man who would do anything, burn bridges, rewrite contracts, even betray allies to keep control. While Simon Cowell projected an image of unshakable control on screen, behind the scenes his body was sending distress signals he could no longer ignore. Years of brutal work schedules, long-haul flights, high-stakes production meetings, and mounting public pressure had taken a silent toll. Insiders revealed that Simon often relied on sleeping pills and energy boosters just to survive the endless filming cycles. But the first major scare came in 2017 when he fainted at his London home and was rushed to the hospital, later blamed on low blood pressure. Still, the public was kept in the dark. Then came 2020. In the middle of a global pandemic, Simon was involved in a devastating electric bike accident at his Malibu estate. The crash shattered his back in multiple places, requiring emergency surgery and the insertion of a metal rod. The injuries were so severe that insiders feared he might never walk again. Confined to bed and out of the public eye, Cowell's sudden disappearance sparked a wave of speculation. Fans noticed his drastic weight loss and gaunt appearance in later public photos, prompting rumors of deeper health issues. Some reports even hinted at private battles with depression, anxiety, and emotional breakdowns following the accident. But once again, Simon spun the narrative. He returned to the spotlight with a leaner frame, crediting a vegan diet and a new lease on life. Still, the sharpness in his voice dulled slightly. The once unshakable judge had been shaken to his core, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But true to form, he kept smiling for the cameras, even as the cracks beneath the surface widened. As Simon Cowell's public profile soared, his personal life began unraveling under the weight of scrutiny, secrets, and emotional strain. For years, he played the role of the untouchable bachelor, flashing smiles on red carpets, dodging relationship rumors, and claiming he was too focused on work for family. But that illusion shattered in 2013 when news broke that Cowell was expecting a child with Lauren Silverman, the wife of one of his closest friends. The scandal exploded overnight. Headlines accused him of betrayal, tabloids hunted for photos, and former associates whispered that this was the first time Cowell lost control of the narrative. While he kept a stoic face in public, insiders say the backlash deeply rattled him. Behind the scenes, the real storm was grief. Both of his parents, who had been pivotal in his life, passed away within years of each other. Cowell, known for his cold armor, reportedly sank into depression, withdrawing from friends and admitting in rare interviews that he'd lost his anchor. Friends say he became more irritable, more isolated, and visibly exhausted. He rarely spoke about it on air, but those close to him claimed the loss haunted him during every show taping, every business deal, every fake smile. Fame had made him a billionaire, but stripped him of peace. And the more he tried to control the narrative with rehearsed charm and production polish, the more his real emotions seeped through in quiet moments. The rare silence after a performance, the softer tone with younger contestants. The man who built careers by judging others now found himself quietly judged by his own regrets. And the mirror was unforgiving. In a twist no one saw coming, the man who once dismissed emotions on live television with a roll of the eyes found himself redefined by something far more personal than ratings: fatherhood. When Simon Cowell's son Eric was born in 2014, the famously cold-hearted judge revealed a side of himself that stunned even his closest friends. Cowell, once dubbed TV's most hated man, suddenly softened. Interviews shifted from ruthless critiques to heartfelt confessions. He admitted that becoming a father changed everything, from how he viewed success to how he approached conflict. Slowly, Simon began stepping back from the camera, not because his fame was fading, but because he wanted to protect something real. Sources say he reduced his production obligations, skipped lavish events, and turned down multi-million-dollar offers just to spend more time with Eric. And following his 2020 bike accident, that transformation only deepened. Lying in recovery for months, unable to move, he reportedly broke down privately, confessing that fatherhood had saved him from spiraling again. Even on talent shows, his judging style shifted. Viewers noticed the once merciless critic had become a mentor, offering advice instead of insults, encouragement instead of ego. He began advocating for mental health awareness and started working more off-camera, using his influence to reshape the industry from the inside. It wasn't a PR stunt. Those closest to him say it was a man genuinely changed, not by scandal, not by ratings, but by the quiet presence of a child who saw him not as a mogul, but simply as dad. For the first time, Simon wasn't building stars. He was raising one. Simon Cowell's legacy was never supposed to be soft. For decades, he wore the crown of controversy. Ruthless judge, hitmaker, media manipulator. But as the lights dimmed and the shows shifted, a different picture began to emerge. While critics still accuse him of turning the music industry into a reality show circus, few can deny his impact. He discovered, and sometimes discarded, more talent than most labels combined. But behind the glossy success stories were quiet contributions the cameras never captured. Cowell poured millions into children's hospitals, animal shelters, and mental health programs, often without public acknowledgement. He began mentoring producers instead of performers, focusing on the next generation of talent builders. In recent years, rumors have circulated that Simon is planning his exit from the limelight altogether, grooming new executives to take over Psycho, while quietly pulling back from on-screen judging. Insiders suggest he's writing a memoir, one that will allegedly expose the brutal truth behind the scenes of the Idol empire. Others say he's considering retirement abroad, far from the chaos of TV and tabloids. And yet his shadow lingers across pop culture, visible in every audition format, every golden buzzer, every emotionally engineered moment on screen. Love him or loathe him, Simon Cowell didn't just change how we watch talent. He changed how talent is made. He became the architect of a new entertainment economy, one where emotion is currency and perception is king. The man who once mocked dreams for a living may leave behind a complicated legacy. But one thing is certain: nothing in modern fame has ever looked the same since Simon Cowell